Welcome, everyone. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles, and wherever you're watching this on Substack or YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or however this is coming to you, welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, More the merrier here in Hopium land. This is a weekly gathering of the proud, plucky patriots of the Hopium community. We use this time to kind of level set and take stock of where we are in this battle for our democracy and for against Trump and MAGA. And so I'll spend 20 minutes or so giving you my thoughts, and we'll take questions and have a discussion the rest of the way. Um, and I am coming to you live from the newly occupied capital of the United States of America, Washington, D.C. So when I talk to you and I do my analysis and my commentary, I try to stay very focused on data and facts, right? And I'm very careful to try to not to only present to you in a sort of a conservative way, what we're seeing out there based on data and facts. And then informed by my many years in this business, and I've been doing this a long time. And what I laid out in a piece this week about when we came back, it may have been yesterday, is that I argued that our goal this fall should be twofold, that we should try to win the fall, and that we should have the message of the fall be that the tide has begun to turn against Trump in a meaningful way. And I think that has to be our collective aspiration this fall. And I'm a little bit more convinced that this is possible and doable than I was tonight, than I was even yesterday. And let me make my case to you for why. Number one is that I still think we're in this place where these two things can be true at the same time. One is that Trump is continuing to do extraordinary harm to the country. He is breaking things that will be difficult, if not impossible, to repair, and that we must work and act with incredible vigor and intensity to both mitigate the damage he's doing and to win back power. And then second is that I think Trump, the political project, Trump, the brand, is failing and he's weakening and he is struggling. He has spent, I think this current dynamic that we're in right now with Trump really began at the beginning of June when Elon Musk opened up on Trump and they had their break. And Elon spent 3 days on Twitter beating the crap out of Trump. And even to the point where he said that Trump is in the Epstein files, all this stuff's going to come out. So this whole Epstein thing that happened was pushed by Elon, right? Elon pushed Trump's involvement in the Epstein files into the news in early June. And then he even in an exchange that I showed yesterday endorsed the idea of replacing Trump with JD Vance. I think that 3 day break that they had, where Trump, who admires the wealthiest men in the world, MBS, Putin, and Elon, right, are his kind of heroes, the people he admires and emulates and wants to be like. This was a blow to Trump's ego, a significant blow, I think. I'm now, giving my interpretation of what I think happened. And the dramatic escalation of the recent months that we've seen from Trump began just within days of those attacks from Elon. And we saw this escalation in Los Angeles, where within a few days, we had Marines on the ground, like out of nowhere, right? Over nothing, over a couple hundred people protesting in a suburb of Los Angeles. It was sort of this wild overreaction by Trump and Stephen Miller to what I think was sort of a narcissistic injury for Trump, where he all of a sudden wasn't feeling strong and powerful, but feeling weak. And also, the issue of the Epstein files got raised, right? Which I think is going to be a through line to everything that's going on here, or we should call them the Trump Epstein files, perhaps is more appropriate. And then Trump has spent the last 3 months desperately trying to restore his strength and power and manhood. He has tried all these extraordinary things, rolling out the Marines in Los Angeles, bombing Iran, passing the big ugly bill, which they're now running away from the branding and the marketing of this because it failed so miserably. He then in August, um, dramatically escalated. And I believed and naively that August was going to be a quiet month. He's an old man. He had run a campaign. He had needed time to rest. He was looking not so good. His performances were growing more wild and unhinged. And instead, Trump took no time off this August. He's not taken any time off this year. He's had weekends where he's golfed, but he did not take a vacation. And my assessment about why this matters so much is that I think it's a sign of his manic desire, desperate desire to restore his strength and manhood and his poll numbers, right? His poll numbers started dropping when Elon attacked him. He had had in the month of May, in early May, when he put the Liberation Day tariffs on, his numbers dropped. And then slowly over the month, they were coming back and they were getting to a place where they weren't so bad, right? He wasn't in positive territory, but they just weren't as bad as they were. And then Elon's attack on him, and his poll numbers have just steadily dropped during this whole period. Where now, he's and all of these efforts to restore his standing with the public, because he needs an admiring public for his, Trump. Some dictators and authoritarians don't need an admiring public. That's not this guy. This guy, the very first thing when he became president, he was arguing about crowd size, right? Back in 2017. He needs the applause. He needs the bending of the knee. He needs the sense that he's a beloved figure, that he's a hero and not a villain. And that's been denied him. And the other thing is that what's happened during this period since early June is that all of the major areas that matter to voters on the bombing of the things that he did, his agenda, and the things that matter to voters, he has been unable to get into positive territory on anything that matters to voters. The occupation of Los Angeles went deeply negative very quickly, not immediately, but over time, right? And within a few days, we actually had polls showing him deeply underwater. The bombing of Iran was deeply underwater. It was one of the first kind of major military exercises in recent history that was immediately rejected by the American people. The big ugly bill was rejected by the American people. The wild tariff escalation in August that began the sort of August of escalation has been rejected by the American people. His immigration policy and deportations is in negative territory with the public. And even just this recent occupation of DC, which there was at least in the beginning a little bit of polling, it's dead August polling, showing that it might not be a negative thing. Now that we have definitive over the last few days, a series of highly credible polls showing like all of these other issues, he's in negative territory. And what's happening is that his decline, part of his decline is that he's losing his persuasive capacity. And immediately when he does anything important, it's immediately rejected by more people than are accepting it. Sometimes it's in, very negative, right? I mean, he's down 20, 30 points on tariffs and prices, on healthcare, and other things. But it's incredible that all of these things that he's tried to change the dynamic, to restore his strength and power and manhood, right? Strength and power in capital letters, have failed. And this is a big deal because it speaks to what I think is his ebbing powers, that he is in decline physically, cognitively, and politically. And that you're beginning to, what happened in August is that there was almost this manic, desperate effort to fundamentally, while everybody was gone, right? He rolled out the red carpet for Putin. He did these wild tariff increases. He fired the BLS director, the DIA, the head of the DIA, and he's trying to fire a Fed governor. He has raged and angered and all this stuff, which is there to sort of restore this sort of central part of Trumpism, which is that he is strong and not weak, and winning and not losing, and a hero and not a villain. All of this has failed. And they have to be, the political people in the White House have to be worried. And that's why you saw this sort of reaction they had, right? Which is now they're trying to rig the elections and steal congressional seats. And they're trying to now, make these wild claims about elections and voting. This is all has an air of desperation and ridiculousness around it, right? It's an absurd. His justification yesterday for moving the space command from Colorado, which is going to cost billions and billions of dollars, right? Because he got up that morning and that's what he decided to do. It's like whatever he, ate uh, Alabama sausage for breakfast, so he decided to get up and give Alabama a gift, right? Is that he did this, and the rationale was that because Colorado has all male voting, all mail-in voting, and that they have rigged elections, and so he's going to take away this big thing from them because of this. I mean, think about this for a second, right? Colorado, and I've worked in Colorado. Colorado has made a series of efforts over a long period of time to make it easier for people to vote. They have one of the highest turnout rates of any state in the country, even without having competitive statewide elections. And in a democracy, that's something to be emulated, right? That's a good thing. Large, aggressive citizen, enthusiastic citizen participation in a democracy is the goal of a democracy. For Trump, that becomes something to punish them for. And I think there is this place that we live with him where that his sort of strongman antics often are now feeling more ridiculous. Like we've seen the movie now and we've seen the act, and it's become farcical instead of compelling. And I think that he's losing his grip on all of us in a way that is, while, by the way, continuing to do enormous harm. I don't want to in any way minimize any of that. But he's losing his grip, and Trump, the political project, even today, the Trump political team went in and briefed the House and Senate Republicans on a total rebrand of the big ugly bill. Why are they doing that, right? Is it because they know it's a failure and it's an anchor around them and it's going to continue to drive their poll numbers down and prevent them from having the elections we want to have? Some of you say, well, Trump's doing all this because he doesn't think there are going to be elections in 2026. Trump's doing all this because he thinks there's going to be elections and he knows he's going to lose. And so he's trying to do things to make it less likely that he loses. This whole idea that he's trying to eliminate elections is false. And it's a corrosive meme in our party because what it does is that it causes people not to think that all this work that we're doing to win elections is useless, which of course it isn't. Everything we're doing is actually working to degrade him and weaken them. And I think that what you've seen, just in this past, while this was a terrible month for our democracy and the escalation that Trump went through, we also flipped another Iowa seat. Joni Ernst announced she's retiring, another sign of weakness. We had recruits Roy Cooper and Sherrod Brown get in, showing, making it more likely that we can make the Senate competitive this cycle. We've also seen the inspiration of Gavin Newsom and the Texas Democrats and J.B. Pritzker, who've been out there, I think, finding a higher gear for our movement. And I think something else that's happened in over this late summer is that you've started seeing what I'm trying to articulate as sort of a second stage of the pro-democracy movement emerge, which is you're starting to see more collaboration among major players to sort of strengthen the connective tissue of our movement. Because part of Trump's strength is to isolate people, to keep them apart, as opposed to allowing them come together to be strong together. And so there's an isolation strategy, a divide and conquer strategy, which is why that our impulse has to be to always that we're going to hang together or we're going to hang separately. And we have to do everything we can to keep growing this movement and making it bigger with everybody adding addition, not subtraction. And you saw it first, and we've had the Democratic AGs on here talking about this. The Democratic AGs have been meeting every day, 5 days a week, and planning their coordinated strategies. They've been highly effective in challenging Trump in the courts. We saw just over this last month, right? We saw Democratic governors pen a joint letter about Trump sending troops into their states. We saw the New England states start meeting about coming up with a regional approach to vaccines, given the abandonment of our vaccine system by the CDC in the last few weeks. We saw just today an announcement by California, Oregon, and Washington, where they're going to be coordinating together around a new vaccine strategy for the region. We've seen it. We've seen the mayors have started meeting now to coordinate and strategy and to have a joint approach. And it's my belief, as I wrote in a major piece in the last few weeks, that we have to encourage our leaders to understand they aren't just the head of the Senate or the head of the House or just a single governor, but they're part of a movement. And they need to attach themselves into that movement to strengthen the movement. They have to have a movement mentality. And what I called for in one of my essays is a coordinating council to be established between Schumer and Jeffries and the Democratic governors, the Democratic AGs, the big mayors, to start creating some kind of joint strategic approach. Because again, Trump is successful by dividing and conquering, and therefore we need to get bigger and stronger together and to continue to help encourage this kind of movement thinking and movement strategy. We're seeing elements of this up today, emerge, right? And I think this is really important. You're starting to see other governors like Wes Moore emulate the tactics that J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom have. I think we have started finding a higher gear in recent weeks. Necessary, insufficient, but deeply necessary. And we need to acknowledge it and encourage it because there's so much complaining in our family about our lack of movement, right? But let's remember, everybody, what have we achieved? What we've achieved is that we have been overperforming in special elections and local elections by a much bigger margin than we were at this point in 2017, which was a very successful election cycle for us. We've had, Trump is now in deep trouble in terms of his approval rating and his major initiative. The big ugly bill is the most unpopular piece of legislation in modern times, and which, let's remember, the House and Senate Democrats and the DNC did a joint effort for months and months and months to grade that bill, which was, we have to give them credit for the success of that. We are leading now in the generic ballot by 3 to 4 points, making it far more likely that we're going to have the election that we all want to have in 2026. It's insufficient. Our candidates in the fall elections this year are performing well and outraising their opponents. We had a very good poll in Virginia today that showed Spanberger up 12 today, even though there have been other polls showing the race a little bit closer. We have to recognize there's been very little high quality polling in these races. And we can't allow these red wave, dear leader, right wing, fake pollsters shape our understanding of what's happening in these elections. I don't know. My honest opinion is I don't really know where these races are, but we're going to learn because I think we're going to start seeing polling. But I'm encouraged by the fundraising, the intensity of the campaigns, the quality of the candidates. We've had Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill on Hopium, and they'll both be joining us again soon to give us updates on their races. So I'm encouraged by all of that. I'm encouraged by all that because I think that, I think my own take in the last few days is that there is the circle of defiance is growing. People are growing more ambitious in their attempt to challenge him because they see him as being weak and ridiculous and dangerous and traitorous, and in decline. And so I think that you saw it just in the court cases in the last few days. We had his tariffs, the terrible tariffs were declared illegal and unconstitutional by an appeals court this time, a deeply meaningful ruling that is appropriate and that I hope will be, who knows what happens when it goes to the Supreme Court, but the tariffs have lost in every court battle that they've been in. We saw the ruling come from California yesterday where Gavin Newsom prevailed in the suit to knock to declare illegal the occupation by the Marines and the military in Los Angeles. And Trump was found to have violated the Posse Comitatus Act, which is something I don't think any of us ever thought these words would come out of our mouth in our adult lifetime. We also saw another ruling that said that he illegally used the alien, oh my God, I'm forgetting that name, but an old bill to remove people into the gulag. And then today we had another encouraging ruling in the courts that was where Harvard was given a summary judgment and was ordered, and the government was ordered to pay back the $2 billion that Trump had attempted to steal from them. These are big blows to him. And it's a reason why you may not see the military going into Chicago because the ruling from the Posse Comitatus ruling yesterday may be more applicable to what's happening in Chicago than what's happening here in DC, which is a very unique circumstance that is not because of the federal nature of this city. Trump has more authorities here than he does in other parts of the country. He's now thinking about going into New Orleans because they have a complicit governor in New Orleans. But this is all of this is looking. If you take a step back and you decide you're not going to orient yourself around fear and worry, which is a legitimate thing looking at everything that's happening, he looks desperate and ridiculous and diminished. And, he disappeared for a week. I mean, I wanted to spend a minute talking about this. For those of you who are Hopium regular readers, I've been talking about the fact that he hasn't taken a vacation as something that was significant because he's an old man. He has not had, he won his election. The getting the government together is an unbelievable undertaking. He hasn't taken a major vacation. JD Vance has been out taking vacation after vacation, even during national emergencies, right? Trump never left the city. And it was shocking to me because this city shuts down in August. Nothing happens here. He knows that, right? Capitals in Europe, nothing happens in Europe. And because of whether it's his narcissistic need, his sense that he needs to be the center of attention every day, or the sense that he's aware of his ebbing powers and he's in decline and that he needed to war against that by showing up every day and trying to control the world and bend the knee, get everyone to bend the knee. He was here every day, right? And there was no break. He even had this insane summit in Alaska. He occupied DC. He fired the BLS director, like these wild, aggressive things during August while people were supposed to be resting up, as he should have been resting up, as the oldest man ever elected to the presidency who's exhibiting significant public health problems in the last few months. But he didn't do it. And what is the explanation for that, right? And my explanation is that he feels his power is ebbing and he's fighting against it. And he's needing to restore his strength, his power. He needs to drink the blood of virgins, right? He needs to go through the process of restoring the strength and manhood that Elon started taking away from him in June, that the Epstein files, the danger, the clear danger that the Epstein files represent, the ghosts of his rancid past that are haunting him for what he did to those young people, in young women in those days as Jeffrey Epstein's best friend for 10 years, right? The idea that he's innocent, that there's any possibility of him being innocent, is absurd at this point, given the lengths they've gone to cover up, the Trump Epstein files, as I call them. And so I do think that, we've seen in the last few days this continued escalation, this sort of the absurdity of what happened with his justification for moving the space command, which is an enormous waste of time and money and make work bullshit from a crazy declining dictator. And then the attack, the illegal attack on those, whoever those people were in Venezuela, whatever that thing was about, right? And this all feels to me like sometimes the wheels go round and round on the bus, but sometimes they come flying off. And I just get the sense that he is weakened now. And that what that means for us is that we have to go on offense and we have to work as hard as we can. We have an opportunity and we must seize it together. We need to win the fall. We need to win. All of you need to be all in on these fall elections, whichever one you decide to get in. Volunteer, give money, be part of the campaign, go fight it out with everything you got. Be part of the national voter registration efforts that I've been talking about here that can get us ready for 2026. Support candidates like Sherrod Brown and Roy Cooper and some of these House candidates that Charles mentioned earlier that we're going to be getting behind, right? Be in the game. We have an opening and an opportunity, and we need to seize it together. He is weakening and he looks more desperate and crazy and mad every day. And I think people feel it. I mean, JD Vance to have said in that interview last week that he's ready to go if anything terrible happens to Trump was kind of a shocking thing that, he claims that he's experienced, but his inexperience showed by even him taking the bait on the question, right? And today he couldn't even answer a simple question about what's the legal justification for what we're doing in Venezuela. And literally his answer was, well, they were drug dealers coming into the United States. By the way, Venezuela is pretty far away from the United States. And it was just an absurdity, right? And I think that in some ways, people do at some point start realizing the emperor has no clothes. or that the wizard, we can pull the curtain back from the wizard. I feel like there is a greater consciousness now in our family of the need to keep finding a higher gear, that we have to mitigate the damage, not just win the midterms next year. Winning the midterms, like taking the losses so we can go win next year, is not acceptable. This is why I did an interview today with Senator Alsobrooks from Maryland, which will be out later tonight, who's become a leader in the fight against Trump's war on science, higher ed, and public health. It's a terrific interview. Get to it when you can. But she's very much on the front foot, calling for Kennedy's firing, and because this is about mitigating the harms that are being done to us. And I just get the sense that somehow it is getting harder and harder to ignore the dangers, the absurdity, the brown, the burnt orange makeup, the crazy hair, and because he is exhibiting weakness and desperation and decline. And so we know where we are. We know where we are, everybody in Hopium world, right? This guy is the greatest danger to our republic in our history. He's doing unbelievable harm every day to our democracy and to our standing in the world, to our economy, to our public health, to just about everything, right? It's an incredible agenda, what I call one of sabotage, plunder, and betrayal. He's enriching himself, like the seven deadly sins have all sort of manifested in one single human being in Trump. And, this sloth and greed and all the things that he's become, this enormously ugly, dangerous, historic figure. But he's weakening everybody, and we keep winning elections, and we just need to go win the fall together. That's what I ask tonight. That's what we need to do. That's what's required of us now. No more bitching and moaning, right? We just got to put our heads down and go to work and take advantage of this opportunity that we have. And if you like this video tonight, share it with others. Like it on Substack or wherever you're listening to it, and subscribe to Hopium and bring in everyone you've ever met to be part of this wonderful family of proud, plucky patriots. Let me get to questions.